Sunday at 4 o'clock, right? Sunday, 2 picks. 2 picks. 4 sacks. 4 sacks, 2 picks.
I like it. Are you gonna put names to the picks again, or are you gonna just let this one
I'm
ride?
gonna let those float.
Okay.
I'm gonna let those float.
Prediction.
All right.
And now, time to get in the huddle with your host, Charles Barge Ritchie, here on the Mass Steel Podcast.
This thing belongs to Mr. Rooney, belongs here, and let's see if we can bring this damn thing back here next year, along with the Super Bowl. Here we go.
The game is over. The Pittsburgh Steelers did it the hard way.
With the 10th pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Pittsburgh Steelers select Devin Bush, linebacker, Michigan.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome to this late night primetime edition of the Mass Steel Podcast here. Me, Charles Project Ritchie, as we got a good one in store right now, as we are a little over 24 hours away as the Steelers will await their fate and see what happens in week number 17 as they will look to try and get into the playoffs, granted with some help going into tomorrow. And like I said, the Steelers' overall lifetime when trying to get into the playoffs with help, they are 4 for 8 in their history. And the times that they got in where they had to win on the last game of the season and get some help to get in the playoffs, those years were 1976, 1989, 1993. Then, of course, 4 years ago, 2015. Will the Steelers under Mike Tomlin be able to go 2 for 5? They're 1 for 4 right now. And I don't know about anyone else, but just staying up a little bit late. I don't know if anyone's got a chance to see that that Fiesta Bowl right now that just got wrapped up by Ohio State and the defending college football champions, Clemson, right there. And I got to tell you, though, that was one heck of a game right there. Definitely, I think one the Buckeyes let slip away big time, had huge lead in that contest when you look at it. And then, of course, I mean, you think about all the things that could have went a little bit wrong, but I like to think there was like a one call like earlier in the game too. I think like in the first half where there was the one defender lowered his helmet towards the quarterback. He got ejected. I think little by little momentum clearly slipped away from the Buckeyes at that point. And if I'm not mistaken, I think they were able to score one more time in the game, one more touchdown. But ever since then, you had Clemson right there who came back with 30 unanswered points. I mean, in that span, outscoring them 30-7, and you got your college football championship matchup set between right now the defending champions Clemson going up against number 1 LSU. And boy, that's gonna be a good matchup, number 1 versus number 3. And right now, like I was mentioning here in the description of this podcast here, I don't know if anyone's got a chance like I did and seen the last 6 weeks on NFL Network with the host Rich Eisen, who's the primary host on the NFL Game Day during the week throughout the NFL season, as well as like Chris Collinsworth too, who's a surprise guest on there too. He's the analyst for Sunday Night Football. Then of course you had head coach Bill Belichick. It was cool to hear him know his classness and Humbleness brought this whole segment, just acknowledging a lot of the great players in this game, and he just had some off the chart analysis right there. But there's some positions I want to get into. If anyone didn't get a chance to see yesterday, sure you can YouTube it somewhere if you're on NFL Network for your phone or your tablet. See if you can find the video right there. But anyway, I gotta tell you, they had a 2-hour special last night because it was the quarterback position that they were wrapping up with. And I gotta say, I was fairly disappointed, to be honest, Joe, when you look at it. And like I said, we are going to get to some Steelers in a little bit, but this was definitely fresh in my mind. I want to share this with you and Steeler Nation. Who do you think right now on the Steelers, you think we could add one more person on this list? One, maybe two more. I definitely got my answer. I definitely want to hear from you guys in just a moment here. But the Steelers right now, overall as a team, they finished up as they were tied for fourth with the 49ers, Packers, and Cowboys with 9 players total making the NFL 100 team. And, of course, those players, just to recap, for the Steelers, you had briefly a running back, even though he was a Brown most of his life, he still played as a Steeler for a couple of games, Stokan Marion Motley, who actually had in his career rushing for 4,720 yards and 63 touchdowns. And then, of course, from there, you also had your center, Mike Webster, who was a nine-time Pro Bowler and a 5-time All-Pro. If I'm not mistaken, he got in a second attempt in the Hall of Fame. Then, of course, you also had defensive tackle Mean Joe Green, who was the very first selection of the representing the Steelers and the NFL 100 team. Linebackers, not really surprised over here. You had Jack Ham, Jack Lambert. And then you had 2 cornerbacks, Mel Blunt, Rob Woodson. Shortly after that, no safeties, which I think Troy Polamalu should have been on there. He wasn't. I'll get to him in a second. And then you also had your head coach, Chuck Noll. So there you have it. Those are your 9 representatives. Just to recap, you had Marion Motley for your running back. And then you also had center Mike Webster, defensive tackle Mean Joe Green, linebackers Jack Ham, Jack Lambert. Then you also had 2 corners, and Mel Blunt, Rob Woodson. And then you also had your head coach and Chuck Noll. And bam, I mean, there you go. And the Steelers, they represent very well. Oh, it was 2 guys in the O-line, excuse me. One guy who I was leaving off here for the Steelers, there was also on there as an offensive lineman here that made it. You also had Cal Hubbard here, who's also a Packer, Giant, and Steeler right there. So those are your 9 players all together right there as we take a look at things here. And here we go. And let's get ready to get into it. Let's let the debates get in. Let's begin right now with my favorite part. I'm going to go with the safety. I'm going to get right into it. And I remember calling in the Bob Pompiani show on 93.7 The Fan the next morning. He could be heard every Saturday from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Central Standard Time in Pittsburgh. I'm listening from Chicago time, so excuse me for that. But anyway, I mean, a guy like Troy Polamalu, and this is a guy who I was very surprised did not even make the cut on this team. And I really felt like he should have been on here. I mean, obviously, when you look at him versus Ed Reed, Ed Reed's going to get the nod. But you got to remember, Troy Polamalu was more of a strong safety in his career. And he had, pretty much when you look at it too, look at pass deflections. He had 107 pass deflections compared to Ed Reed's 139. So not too far off right there. There's a difference in 32. He had 14 forced fumbles where he made a lot of his phenomenal efforts at. And he never fumbled the ball. He had 0 fumbles in his career, 7 fumble recoveries, 120 yards for his fumble recovery yards. And currently that right there ranks 3rd. behind Ed Reed, and the other one, which was Larry Wilson of the Cardinals. This guy who's also a first ballot Hall of Famer. He had 8 Pro Bowls, 4-time All-Pros right there. But you had some other guys that edged him out too. I mean, in this selection too. I mean, let's think about it too when you look at it. I mean, look at Jack Christian, Detroit Lion right here, who was a 5-time Pro Bowler, 6-time All-Pro. He was 3-time champion. And granted, around that time when he was playing, because he played in an era from 1951 to 1958. So the MVP award didn't start coming out until 1958. But remember, Defensive Player of the Year, I think, debuted in 1971, I want to say, if I'm not mistaken. So that was a little bit right there. I think if anyone, I mean, there was a lot of like safeties on here that deserved this nod. I mean, when you look at it, I mean, when you actually look at it, it's all said and done. Because honestly, I think, you know, it was damn good choices. But at the same time, too, I really feel like they definitely, I mean, one of the biggest things, they wanted to have people that represented 100 years of the league. I think Troy Polamalu definitely got snubbed on here. I mean, I'm looking at it, too. I mean, you have Ronnie Lott. A lot of people were debating, like, you know, he shouldn't have been on there. But guess what? This was a hard-hitting safety right here in his career, a guy who was a 4-time Super Bowl champion who never really messed around when playing, especially in his 49er career. And then later going on for like a few years with the Raiders. And I think he had 1 season with the Jets before he hung it up. I mean, he was Joe Montana. So, I mean, Bulldog, when you think about things, as far as his career, as far as like being loyal and stuff. I mean, this guy right here was a phenomenal beast at all times. But I mean, right there, I mean, Polamalu, I think, you know, the biggest thing about him at the end of the day, people will look at, because this will be very interesting right here. And I'm not going to lie to you, it's going to be very interesting to see if he even gets first ballot honors in the Hall of Fame. We're going to find out in about a little over a month, as it's getting a little close right there. Hall of Fame selection. Remember, that's going to be made on Saturday evening before the Super Bowl, day before. And I got to say, I hope he gets in. I mean, there's going to be a lot of other people on here. I mean, on this ballot, when we take a look for the finalists going into this year, as we take a look at it, and we'll see what happens. But it's 25 semifinalists right now. And remember, you're going to be having 3 first-year eligible players right now in safety. Troy Polamalu, Reggie Wayne, and linebacker Patrick Willis are among the 25 semifinalists of modern-era players for the Pro Football Hall of Fame's class of 2020. And the list also includes 4 others: linebacker Carl Banks, running backs Fred Taylor, and Ricky Wathers. In addition, the defensive tackle Bryant Young. And then, we'll see how that's going to unfold right there, for that class. And I'd be definitely very interested to see how that gets voted on by the writers, and see what happens. But you're going to be looking at it right now. And like I said, you're going to be having just once again, just a recap. I mean, that's going to be right now. You're going to be you're going to be having like semifinalists and stuff over here. And right now, it's going to be 20 members for the NFL's Centennial Celebration, which will include 5 modern era players, 10 senior nominees, 3 contributors, and 2 coaches. So again, 5 modern era players, 10 senior nominees, 3 contributors, and 2 coaches. That's how it's going to go down this year for the Hall of Fame. I hope Troy Polamalu gets in on like the first ballot, though, because definitely he really deserves it. And the Steelers got the most, I want to say, overall, when we look at Hall of Fame and stuff right now for the overall being, but and we take a look at it over here, and so as far as like the people who got the most first ballots, Steelers I believe got the most with 12. If I'm not mistaken, they might be tied with the Cowboys. I think there was a Cowboy that got it, but I think he was like a PR guy. But anyway, I mean, I just wanted to see it for that bragging right there. So, like I said, I mean, the safety list, I think is pretty fair. I mean, you got Ken Houston on here, who's a damn good safety in his own right. Played with the Oilers and Redskins. He didn't win a Super Bowl in his career for that moment, but that guy was 12-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro. Not really too much of an argument right there. Ryan Lott, I guess you could definitely say, but definitely no doubt was Emlyn Tunnel, former Giant and Packer in his career. He won 2 NFL championships with those teams, 9-time Pro Bowler, 4-time All-Pro. And then, of course, you had Larry Wilson, who was definitely another guy who was definitely an elite player, 8-time Pro Bowler, 5-time All-Pro. But like I said, if I was going to swap out like who I would probably like Phil Polamalu with, I mean, in there, if I had to take one of these guys off the list and who I would be able to sub him in for, I'd probably swap him out with Jack Christensen. I mean, Jack Christensen is a guy who's got 5 Pro Bowls, 6 All-Pros. I mean, no offense, and I don't think this guy was a first ballot Hall of Famer. I think Troy Polamalu has a little bit better numbers. I mean, yeah, you got to consider the playing times when this was played, but I definitely feel like this was a time right here. I think Troy Polamalu just had better dynamics, and like I said, Bob Papiani always makes a great point on this. I mean, when you look at it too. And Bob Pompiani, who can be followed on Twitter at KDPomp, it's just that a lot of stuff that Troy Polamalu does, you know, some of the electrifying, game-changing dynamics are not going to necessarily show up on a stat sheet. But at the end of the day, too, this is a guy right here who's had such an impact on his team and taken his team to the next level. I mean, if you ask me, I mean, so valuable. I mean, that you would trade up 10 spots. Or you would trade up quite a few spots to get this guy, and that they haven't done that since the 03 draft. I mean, until you got to Devin Bush. And I remember speaking with Billy Hillgrove earlier in the year and just looking at it, and he definitely feels like this is a thing right here when you look at what this means. I mean, we're going to see how it goes. But I'll tell you right now, I feel like Polamalu was a guy who was left off. That could have been your 10th one. And then let's get into quarterback real quick. I'm going to get into another position right here who I felt like it was left off. I had to say one more Steeler. I probably had to question why isn't Terry Bradshaw on there, but Roger Staubach is. Roger Staubach, I mean, right here, and I love him. He was a great guy who had a phenomenal career. But at the same time, a guy that Terry Bradshaw beat head-to-head. And Roger Staubach, who came out of the University of Navy, like I said, he was a 6-time Pro Bowler, never an All-Pro, but Bradshaw was. But I think when you look at like Bradshaw, I mean, he just had slightly better numbers, I think, than Staubach. When you look at it, I mean, Bradshaw definitely had more longevity, but obviously it did take him a while to win over that starting position when he got drafted in 1970. I mean, him and Chuck Noll were not on the best of terms as far as like cohesively just yet. He was just barely starting to come into form. He benefited, I think, a lot when his numbers started going up was from the Mel Blount rule, and I believe that took place in 78. I mean, when you took it, and this guy did a lot here. I mean, for his passing, and we'll take a look. And so it was in 1978. Just how great Mel Blount was doing at defending the receiver and being so physical. and be able to lock someone down and not give him much of an edge. They changed that rule, obviously, and you saw right there, and the rest they say is history in that point. But Bradshaw, like I said, let's look at Bradshaw and look at the numbers right here. Guy finished with close to 28,000 yards, had a touchdown interception ratio of 212 touchdowns to 210 interceptions. Well, you had Roger Staubach, who finished with nearly 23,000 yards in his career. He played 11 seasons in his NFL career. And like I said, I mean, this is a guy right here who had 153 touchdowns, 109 interceptions. Terry Bradshaw was at least an All-Pro, and it was greatly back in 1978 when he was the only Steelers MVP, AP MVP, representing the franchise. No other players done that. A lot of the Steelers teammates over the history gotten those awards by Defense Player of the Year, and that's how I think about that. But I think like Bradshaw, he should have definitely edged out Staubach. And that's where I have like a little bit of disagreement, especially when you be a guy head to head in like two Super Bowls, Super Bowl 10, Super Bowl 13. But I think the biggest guy who definitely got ripped off on here, because you're also implementing current players in here on this list. I mean, such as right now you got like Tom Brady. He was like the only guy, but guys didn't retire not too much longer before him. You also had Peyton Manning, who's a former Colton Bronco. And that was about it. But Drew Brees, I mean, this is a guy who not only passed Peyton Manning in not only passing yards, but passing touchdowns. I mean, how the heck did he not get on here? I mean, whose guys had like about, I want to say like about 5,000 yard passing seasons, and he's not on this list. And I know it's an offensive driven league. I get that, but I mean, obviously, I'll definitely look at a guy like Dan Marino. I'm glad he did not get snubbed on here because I'll be honest with you, he was the last pick to end the NFL 100 show. I really felt that he was going to probably get snubbed for some reason, and he didn't. I thought it was going to probably be Aaron Rodgers they're going to go with to close out the show. I really felt so. But, like I said, Drew Brees right here, is it that, you know, he's only been an All-Pro one time, but overall in his career, I mean, Drew Brees, I mean, he's never been an MVP. I mean, I think that's one big strike against him, just like Roger Staubach. But he's been to 13 Pro Bowls, and he's been an All-Pro one time in here. And that's the only thing I would scratch my head at. Yeah, he's doing a high offense-driven league, but he's doing it just as better as anyone else. And I feel like, you know, he's definitely more like a consistently productive, even with age factor. Again, the number of the dial in, if you guys want to get in on the hotline, the number is 312-209-2232. Again, that number to be reached is 312-209-2232. You can follow me on Twitter at Praj Richie, at MassSteelCJR. Feel free to stream me live right now on my YouTube live channel, which is Men of Steel podcast, as we get into it. And we're going to get into the Steelers-Ravens just a bit here, but I just want to go over these positions. And here are the other quarterbacks he also had on the NFL 100 team. No doubt, Joe Montana, well-deserved to be on there. I mean, when you think of, like, GOATs as far as, like, the quarterback, a lot of people definitely still bring up Joe Montana, even over Tom Brady. He leads the fan voting in that category as far as who you would start over. Then you have Brett Favre, Peyton Manning, Sammy Baugh of the Washington Redskins from 1937 to 1952. He played 16 seasons right there. Then you also had Otto Graham, Cleveland Brown, three-time NFL champion, and I think he won 6 total championships in his playing career. I think another 3 more with the AAFC, if I'm not mistaken. Johnny Unitas, no doubt about it. I mean, that was a slam dunk. Had to be on there. I mean, when you think of quarterbacks back in that time right there, and also was part of the greatest championship game in NFL history against the Giants. I want to say it was in 58 or 59. I can't remember which season, but he's a 3-time champion, 2-time NFL champion, and of course Super Bowl champion. Well, 3-time NFL champion and a Super Bowl champion. Remember, one of those championships did not count, and that was in 1968, where him and his team went to lose to the New York Jets. I mean, in that time. And you thought about it right there. I mean, in that time, and it was not Johnny Unitas who was leading the charge in that time. You had as your quarterback who was filling in for Bob Greasy here, and you had Earl Morrall right there, who was also a former NFL MVP, who actually carried the load for that team, riding a heavy defense, no-name defense at that time, as a matter of fact. And that's about it right there. So I just feel like, just some of these stuff, I would have definitely made a better argument for this show. I definitely feel like a lot of stuff was missed on there. But we'll see how it goes going forward as far as like what translate into tomorrow. So let's also go another position right here, running backs. I mean, he had on here, a lot of good running backs. You had Jim Brown, who's the very first selection of the show back on November 22nd when this whole countdown began. Couldn't argue with him right there, who actually finished out as a 3-time MVP and a champion, 9-time Pro Bowler, 8-time All-Pro. Definitely cannot go wrong with him right there. He was the very first physical running back, and they said on that show too that he was a guy, like when you saw him play, it's like he was grown men playing with kids and backyard football. He was just mauling people, and that was the truth of the matter, and especially for the time that he did in. This is a guy right here who originally just dominated before it got taken to a whole nother level. You also had Walter Payton, Gale Sayers on there. Big time congratulations. Rest in peace, Sweetness. 20 years ago, I can't believe how long that's passed, but that's definitely been a long time right there. And for a guy like that, still being missed to this day, but wow, some good names on here. Of course, you had Emmitt Smith, who's still the all-time leading rushing yards leader, 3-time Super Bowl champion. You also had Eric Dickerson, well-deserved. Barry Sanders right there. Man, you could argue if he would have kept on playing, he would have had the all-time rushing lead, and he could have probably kept going. He could have smashed it, but he only played 10 seasons in his career, so he did what he had to do. You had O.J. Simpson right here, who played 11 seasons. Now, this is where I get a little ticked off and a little irritated, because when you look at the receivers too, you don't have Terrell Owens on there, and this is where I'm talking about, where it comes in the character, where I really feel like a lot of these voters just did not like the guy, and thought like a guy like Terrell Owens being disruptive on teams, the way it was perceived, blowing off and ending off on bad terms. And a lot of franchises felt like they were left in the dark, since he moved on. I think definitely he got a bad rap, and it continues to fuel his drive and his point about how, if you're not playing to the NFL's like standards or what they may think about you or how they like you and their perception, you're not going to be really going far. And I think that was just a lot of hogwash right there, because you have a guy in O.J. Simpson, and no disrespect, but you have a guy that was highly suspected of murder of Nicole Simpson, and then I think the one son-in-law in that case that the father was going after Simpson for, pretty much avoided paying years later, and then you get arrested again for trying to steal back your own memorabilia. And I don't get that. There's a difference between doing something actual criminal. Granted, he has not been totally proven guilty of the murder. But again, I think that's really messed up in the society when you look at it, and you would snub out Terrell Owens in comparison. Granted, it's a different position, but I just really feel like that was just totally wrong. And I definitely feel like Terrell Owens should have been on that list. I mean, no doubt about it. I mean, you have Randy Moss winning the heavyweight battle of head-to-head against him and Randy Moss, who gets in on his first attempt, while Terrell Owens, in his career, he had to wait on his third try to get in. Terrell Owens finished his career second in reception yards. I mean, and then catches. So I don't get it. I mean, you have guys on here too right now. I mean, like on here, I mean, like one guy who I probably take off was Paul Warfield. Granted, he was a big time contributor to Don Shula's undefeated Miami Dolphins, but I mean, come on now. I mean, you have a guy who's finished with 8,565 yards receiving, but yet, I mean, 85 touchdowns. And I just think Owens just had a lot more better bio work. He was able to rush. He had 39 rush tests for 251 yards, averaging 6.4 yards per rush. I mean, when you look at it, and that is tied for third most on that list behind, let's see, you have on here behind Paul Warfield and Jerry Rice. That is a big head scratcher. I just Owens, you can see why he decided to do like Hall of Fame induction his way and not have it in Canton and have it on his own terms. And I mean, a lot of people still looked at him being crazy. Some people may call it selfish, but you know what? I will wish he would have been there. I would love to just see him there as a fan, but at the same time, I can understand why looking back at it. I mean, this guy definitely deserved a little bit better. He definitely got his name tarnished big time by a lot of people. And I guess you could say he was like one of the people who definitely got blackballed in some ways. Now let's get ready to go into right now. I mean, tight ends, I don't really have much of an issue, but the wrap of the receivers here, you also had Raymond Berry of the Baltimore Colts, damn good receiver on here. Don Hudson of the Packers, who played for 13 seasons with the Packers. I think that was one of the three-peat teams on there. 3-time NFL champion, 4-time Pro Bowler, 8-time All-Pro. Larry Fitzgerald, definitely deservedly so. I mean, a guy who's got 17,038 yards receiving on here, and I'd be real interested to see if he'd be able to catch Jerry Rice as far as like in the reception yards, because when you look at it right now, I mean, this guy is second on that list who edged out Terrell Owens right now, and you got Jerry Rice with 22,895. So he would definitely clearly need like about like 6,000 more receiving yards. And you got a guy right here, Larry Fitzgerald, who's in his 16th season. It's going to be real interesting if he'll be able to get it. I'm not too sure if he's going to make it, but he's going to probably end up finish second, more or less. I mean, in that category. I mean, then you got like receptions. And as far as like NFL career, he's also second in receptions behind Jerry Rice, 1,549 versus 1,374. So he needs about 176 more receptions to move ahead Jerry Rice in that category. So which is pretty darn amazing. Larry Fitzgerald could not argue with. Grant, he almost beat the Steelers in Super Bowl 43, but I mean, this is a guy right here who's definitely worked his butt off big time and commanded a lot of respect. And he's a true veteran to have, and still is a respectable fantasy pickup too, by the way. So I'm not too sure, like, how much nowadays when people are voting, how much is fantasy being involved. I think that'd be a good thing to look into. What the writers, how they consider voting on these classes. And then also too, I mean, I already won over my part for safety, offensive lineman. I have no problem with defensive ends, pretty decent. Defensive tackles, not going to really argue. I do feel like on the linebacker side, you can make an argument for right here. Brian Urlacher, he did not make the NFL 100 team right here. This is a guy who had just as many interceptions on this list. He had 22 interceptions for 324 interception return yards. Brian Urlacher, too, who was also an 8-time Pro Bowler, 4-time All-Pro, just like Troy, and a former NFC champion. And he's definitely did a lot. And then he's also got like 1,354 tackles, I mean, in his career. So and I think he's in the top 20 in that stat. But if I had to put him, I put him in that lineup. And you got like on here, you got Chuck Bednarik, Bobby Bell, Derek Brooks, Dick Butkus, Jack Cam, Ted Hendricks, Jack Lambert, Will Lanier, Ray Lewis, Joe Smith, Junior Seau, Lawrence Taylor. I probably do with Chuck Bednarik of the Eagles, who actually played for 14 seasons with the Eagles and was also a 2-time NFL champion, 8-time Pro Bowler, 6-time All-Pro. I'd swap him out with him, to be honest with you. And that's the way I will look at it. But that's my pick right there. Also, cornerbacks, no doubt about it. Congratulations again to Mel Blunt and Rob Woodson. Both terrific, amazing corners for the Steelers. Also pretty good on special teams right here. I mean, when you look at their overall career and what they were able to do, I mean, Rob Woodson was just phenomenal on returns when he played for the Steelers and what he did overall. And just to do what he had to do, I mean, for his time, I mean, even though things did not work out with the Steelers and he moved on to better pastures, I mean, with the 49ers, the Ravens, and the Raiders, I mean, remember, ever since he had his injury back in 1995, I mean, little by little, he was starting to be talked into as far as like moving inside and playing safety position. He wanted more money for covering inside versus covering as a corner. So I feel like that definitely kind of messed with his head a little bit, but he definitely knew his value in that. But yeah, that's my thing right there. So cornerbacks right now, I could make an argument for 2 of them. And I'll probably go with Herb Adderley to be my first one. Former Packer and Cowboy, also 6-time champion too in his career. I mean, when you really think about it, 5-time NFL champion, 3-time Super Bowl champion. I mean, this guy was just pretty much freaking amazing right here. And I just don't know what else to say. I mean, I think this guy right here, you know, who like 3-time Super Bowl champion. I mean, winning the first 2 with the Green Bay Packers under Vince Lombardi, 66 and 67. Then the end of his career, to go out on top. Well, not on top, a year after winning his 3rd Super Bowl with the Dallas Cowboys under Tom Landry. I mean, this guy right here, he was a 5-time Pro Bowler, 4-time All-Pro. I think he could have made it on this list right here. I think Herb Adderley right here, just as many picks as anyone else. He had 48 for 1,046 interception yards. I mean, which right now will be 4th in that category amongst the selections. So, like I said, you had Mel Blount, Rob Woodson, Willie Brown, Darrell Green, Mike Haynes, Dick Knight, Train Lane, Deion Sanders. And that was your corners right there. But then, like, another guy who I would also put in consideration, too, is Champ Bailey, who actually went in on his first ballot. Former Redskin and Bronco, 52 interceptions for 464 yards. But also, too, about Champ Bailey, who's also a 12-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro. I think, you know, when you look at these guys right here, I think Champ Bailey, you could have made a move in there for him. And I think he could have definitely got in on this list. The only question is, who would I swap him out for? I probably, to be honest with you, I'd probably go with Mike Haynes of the Patriots and LA Raiders, to be honest with you. Granted, he did not win any championships, but that'd be the same person I'd swap out even for Herb Adderley. And then you also got safeties, are one in the Troy Polamalu on here. One guy who definitely got robbed on this list, who should have been on this 100 team, now we go in the kickers, is Morton Anderson. The two kickers that they selected was Adam Vinatieri and James Stanlerud. And Morton Anderson, in my opinion, I mean, this guy right here, I mean, versus those two, he has the second best field goal percentage. Obviously, Vinatieri has it with about 84%, but then you got Anderson at 79%, the other guy at 67%. You got to give this one to Morton Anderson, if you ask me. I feel like this guy right here, he stayed around a long time, no doubt about it. I think maybe that's just what hurt his chances a little bit, even though he wasn't a world champion. But Adam Vinatieri had to put on there. He was a 4-time Super Bowl champion, deservedly so. But Morton Anderson has to be on this list. He has to be. And I'm not sure how much grief he gets for missing that kick against Falcons. And I think it was an overtime. I'm not too sure, but that was the 1998 NFC Championship game. They ended up choking away that game to the Falcons. Falcons actually snuck into the Super Bowl over the Vikings, who had an impressive year that year. And I want to say the Vikings that year, I mean, when we look at it, and the Vikings, who never experienced a world championship, but in that 1998 season, which is pretty magical, went 15-1, only to choke down in the NFC Championship game to the Falcons. They ended up finishing up their season at 16-2, but had an offensive force that year, which was totally off the chain. When you think about it, I think it's points scored and yards. They were just mad producing too, and Randy Moss was definitely a big-time contributor on that. But right now, let's get ready to go transition into Steelers talk, as I mentioned. So here we go for tomorrow. As reported by Misty Matthews, the Steelers injury report, we're already aware right now that center Marquise Pouncey and running back James Conner. Pouncey's been dealing with a knee, and Conner with a quad injury. They will definitely be out for tomorrow's game in that contest. When you look at it, so that's definitely going to be a little bit concerned right there, especially without Pouncey. But B.J. Finney, I think he'll be fine. I mean, that was just a little mishap that happened on Sunday as soon as he got out shortly. And I think it was just a wave of emotion right there. So he probably just got caught up in that adrenaline rush in a situation where you're still losing. But honestly, the Steelers, other than that, have a good, clean, full bill of health. I mean, to be honest with you, everybody else was full participants on their practice report, like Steve Nelson, who had a groin injury, full participant on Thursday and Friday. Left inside linebacker, Mark Barron, full participant on Thursday and Friday. And then, of course, David DeCastro, Alejandro Villanueva, Vance McDonald, TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Joe Hay, and Ramon Foster, all full participants on Friday. But, of course, Hayden and Ramon not practicing on Thursday. Hayden had a foot injury, and Ramon's was non-injury related, but that's good to hear. Now, as far as the Ravens go, here, when you go look also too on the Steelers.com website under the injury report, you have right here, as everyone is aware, which Adam Schefter already repeated, who reported earlier in the week, you're going to be having Mark Ingram and Earl Thomas. Now, remember, Mark Ingram, he has the calf injury, so he's definitely going to be out. And while Earl Thomas has the knee and hand injury, who's out for this contest. So that's going to be an interesting scenario right there. But, I mean, like I said, I don't want to make a bunch of excuses because look what happened last week when you had a pretty banged up Jets team and they were still able to beat you defensively. I mean, this is still considered like a trap game, despite being the final game of the season. But at the same time, you're backed into a corner. You got no choice but to either win or tie plus a Titans loss, or a win plus a Titans loss or tie, or Steelers and Titans lose. You would need the Colts to defeat the Jaguars. Broncos would need to defeat the Raiders. Steelers would get in that way, because what ends up happening, just to recap, Colts, even though they're eliminated from playoff contention altogether, they still got a chance to move up into second place in the division. And the reason for that would be because Colts have a better divisional record than the Jaguars. Jaguars have a losing record in the division. So what would end up happening is that the Colts, if they win that game, they would end up going to 4-2 for their season as far as in the AFC South. While the Titans would have a losing record, that would eliminate them, and then the Raiders just lose. They would go 7-9. But let's just say if those scenarios happen where Steelers, Titans lose, Colts defeat the Jaguars, and then let's say the Raiders beat the Broncos. Remember, I said the Broncos would need to beat the Raiders for the Steelers to get in. But if the Raiders beat the Broncos, it's the other way around. The Steelers would then need the Bears, Lions, Chargers, and Patriots to all lose for the Steelers game. And the reason for that is because if the Steelers and Raiders were to finish up tie, Raiders had the strength of victory over the Steelers. That's where we got to watch out right there. So those are some key factual points right there. I mean, in that regard, that we all have to take into consideration. And for that, and that's why they got to be careful. They got to wise up, and you got to come out ready. And for them to still be sticking with Duck Hodges right now, it says a lot, like with this unit, how they support one another, and especially the quarterback, especially one of the biggest positions you got at this point in time. So that's how I'm looking at it right now. And then also, big shout out, congratulations right now, as reported by @Steelers Teresa Varley, who can be followed on Twitter @Teresa_Varley. Cam Hayward, who can be followed on Twitter @Cam Hayward, earns the Chief Award, which is named after Art Rooney Sr., and that's usually being like always available to speak to the media or speak to people during times. He got that honor this year. And, of course, you got Devin Bush, who earned the Joe Green Great Performance Award that was presented to the team's Rookie of the Year. Devin Bush, you can follow @DBush11. So big-time shout-out and congratulations to those men. And I got to say, no matter what happens tomorrow, I'll definitely be crushed. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to leave my head from being held up too high, because I got to tell you, the Steelers team under Mike Tom did a damn good job keeping everybody in it to win it, no matter what you say, no matter how much lack of players there were. I mean, obviously, this is a playoff team being expected going into the season. I want to say it was probably like a 50% chance. But the Steelers, I mean, to their credit, and Mike Tomlin right there, I mean, this is a guy who does not like making excuses. And I just feel like with a guy like Tomlin right here, that says a lot about what he does at this time. And when we look at things like that, I think right now he is definitely a guy right here who likes to keep his guys in it, wants to make sure they're focusing on themselves first and foremost, as far as like team goals and success. And let's just face it, he is a competitive coach, and he doesn't want to experience a losing season. You better darn believe. I mean, this guy doesn't think about stats, but I'm sure he's got to be thinking about one in the back of his mind. He's never had a losing season. I don't think he wants to experience this first. And kudos to Tomlin for just not giving up. I mean, they should have been done a long time ago. Like I said, when Ben Roethlisberger went down with his elbow injury, being lost for the season, but they're still in it. And I tell you what, let's get ready to dive into fair or foul. Fair or foul topic number one. If the Steelers make the playoffs, it will prove that ultimately the Minkah Fitzpatrick trade was worth it. And I will say fair on that one. And because if not, people are going to be looking and questioning it. They're going to be looking about why'd you give up a first and a third to get a safety when you could wait for a quarterback. Truth of the matter is, not too many quarterbacks will be available this upcoming draft. I mean, this is a point right now with the Steelers. Like I said, they had to feel pretty darn confident when they heard Ben Roethlisberger says, you know what, he wants to give it a go. He wants to honor his contract. He wants to try and come back stronger than ever, even though nothing is promised. But at the same time, too, I do realize this is a guy right here who doesn't want his career to end on a bad note like that. I just think he just has a lot of pride, like how he wants to be remembered by fans, and I respect that. I just don't see a point right now where you can be looking at it and thinking like, this is his last hurrah this way. No, Ben Roethlisberger, I mean, he's got to feel better about like the cohesiveness, the camaraderie, the chemistry with this team. Yeah, he struggled with the receivers earlier on. He was doing a lot more work. You could definitely see him wincing earlier on even when he was making his throws, clutching at his elbow. But at the same time, too, you gotta believe what I really believe there's a point in life when you play with some youngsters at some point, no matter your age or whatever, and something you love doing, the contagious energy could just rub off sometimes. And I really feel like Ben Roethlisberger felt that. I mean, with his time this year with this Steelers team who obviously had playoff aspirations, possibly championship aspirations, and not really so much right now, but just more so being a playoff team once again. Obviously, we know what they got to do next year as far as like getting back on track offensively. But let's not forget, too, the offensive line. This is a unit that is aging at the end of the day, and you're going to have to be looking at some guys right now, or you're going to have to start questioning who's going to be able to be sticking around. Because, like I said, you at least got 3 out of your 5 guys who are in your 30s, and with the oldest being Ramon Foster at 33 years old, and then you got Alejandro Villanueva at 31, Marquise Pouncey at 30, and then you got David DeCastro at 27, Matt Filer at 27 years old. Those are some stuff you got to reckon with. I mean, if you're Steelers, I mean, nothing lasts forever, but at the same time, too, you got to believe, I mean, they're the sand in the hourglass is slowly fading and starting to decrease. And Father Time is undefeated, so you just never know. You got to readdress those things in the draft. I mean, obviously, I still brag about them as far as protecting their quarterback up to this point. I mean, last couple of weeks, they did give up quite a few sacks, but at the same time, too, the only thing that has suffered is trying to open up some lanes for the running game, and that's the only part I feel like they need to play. And then also, too, right now, we got fair final topic number 2. Steelers rookie receiver Deontay Johnson will make history tomorrow against the Ravens in punt returns. And right now, he needs about 2 more returns. He's averaging about 12.4 yards per return, according to Dale Lally of DK Pittsburgh Sports. He would follow at DLally_PJH at DK Pittsburgh Sports, saying that he'll need at least 2 more returns right now to be able to qualify as far as the top leaders amongst rookies. Because right now, currently, he has 55 receptions, which is currently 3 behind Redskins rookie Terry McLaurin. And that's pretty impressive right there. I'd be real interested to see if he could be able to pull it off tomorrow. I'm going to stay fair in this one only because it's a desperation game. And the Steelers are trying to salvage their season. They want to get in this thing. I hope it's a different ending versus last year. I hope the Steelers go 2 for 5 with Mike Tomlin as far as winning on their last game of the season and gain some help. And he's been pretty freaking good in Week 17 games, only losing 1 time, and that was in his rookie season. So we'll see what tomorrow entails for that. And then last but not least, Texans will rest their stars after a few series if the Chiefs beat the Chargers. I'll say foul that one only because, yeah, you pretty much got nothing to play for. But at the same time, too, with their playoffs being a little bit less than a week away, I do believe that they're going to probably keep their stars in for most of the game only because you want to get some good rhythm in. obviously you don't want to get injured, but at the same time, too, I could also see it, too, if they don't get the number 3 seed, if the Chiefs do beat the Chargers, it's like you want to stay fresh and you want to be ready for that time when their game is called upon. And you just got to be ready for that. So let's get ready to get in the keys to the game. Steelers just start off quick. They need to set the pace early, get on the board fast, and that's going to have to start with the offensive line. They're going to have to play with an attitude. I'm going to need to see running game coming from Karif White, and then, of course, Benny Snell. You need those guys to step up. You need to let them set the pace early. Juju Smith-Schuster's got to have an explosive game. I hope he is in a better mental state right now, since feeling a lot of guilt from not making that catch at the end of the Jets game. So I gotta think he's a guy who's gonna be playing with a vendetta in this game tomorrow. I just feel right now he wants the season on a high note, and I think it's got a good chance of it happening. We'll wait and find out. And then also my other keys game. Just stay focused on your contest. Obviously, there's going to be scoreboard watching when something pops up on the scoreboard. I'm not going to deny that. But at the same time, too, we need to make sure this team right now is able to get themselves in position where they could do some great stuff here and just stay focused. Because the last thing you want to do is be distracted and not take care of business. You end up shooting yourself in the foot. Then you're going to need that Titans loss. And then the Colts victory over the Jaguars, Broncos victory over the Bears to get in. And that's why you have to pay attention on this. And that's going to do it for a wrap for this edition of the Men of Steel podcast. I want to say thank you for those of you who took the time to tune in and stay up with me. Hope it's a good Bear Sunday ending tomorrow. I'll have my closing thoughts more than likely either tomorrow night or back on Monday at 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can follow me once again on Twitter at PrideRichie, at Men of Steel CJR, my Instagram live stream, which is Men of Steel Nation, of course, my YouTube channel, Men of Steel Podcast. And then for those of you who followed and liked the page on Men of Steel Podcast, once you do that, you could also just type in Men of Steel Podcast, or if you want, you can do at Men of Steel Nation. That's capital M, capital N, capital S. And I'll, as I always, leave you. Don't be trolling. Be rolling. Here we go, Steelers. Here we go. I gone.